Welcome to The Savvy Sauce, where we have practical chats for intentional living. I'm your host, Laura Duggar, and I'm so glad you're here. I am thrilled to introduce you to our sponsor, WinShape Marriage. Their weekend retreats will strengthen your marriage, and you will enjoy this gorgeous setting, delicious food, and quality time with your spouse. To find out more, visit them online at winshapemarriage.org. That's WINSHAPE marriage.org. Thanks for your sponsorship. Courtney Sanford is my guest today, and she's an amazing artist and teacher and author, and I'm just so excited to share this conversation. If you're like me and you're ready for summer and your rhythm changes with your kids, she's going to share some super practical tips for incorporating art and beauty into our homes. And I think that you're going to conclude this conversation knowing where to begin and understanding why it matters. Here's our chat. Welcome to The Savvy Sauce, Courtney.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to hear more about your story. So will you share what has led you into the work that you get to do today?
I sure do like to share that story. I didn't start off as a homeschooler. I didn't imagine that would be where my life went. But I was always a creative person. I was a graphic designer, and I worked in the Performing Arts Center, and I got to do lots of fun design for shows. Then along came kids. I actually enjoyed dropping them off at school and going to Target, and I was okay with that. We didn't do public school because the school near me didn't look safe. And we had lived near Columbine High School and thought it was just a beautiful, beautiful school. And when we left Colorado, we thought, oh, isn't it sad that our kids won't go to school there? And then just about a month later, the whole Columbine shooting happened. And so we were kind of traumatized by all of that. And then when I saw the school that my precious 5-year-old would go to, it didn't look safe. And so we sent them to a private school. So here we are spending a lot of money, having high expectations. And the kids were doing all worksheets all the time, and they started to dread going to school, and they didn't love learning, and the excitement of learning just kind of drained out of them. And so we looked into other options and decided that homeschooling would be the way to go. And I found the classical model and just loved the way that sounded. And we tried it and it worked. And the little lights just came back on in their eyes and they started to love learning again. And I found my people and I just learned everything I could about homeschooling. And I just poured myself into it wholeheartedly as unto the Lord and had a great time. And I just loved my time with my kids. And I felt like it was successful, and I encouraged other people to do it, but I wasn't really sure that it worked until they got into college, and they turned out to be successful, thriving humans, and we're really proud of them. One will be a doctor in about a month. He's about to graduate. He has a wife and a little girl, and then my second one has her MBA, and she works for a Christian college where she leads trips, and she's getting ready to take a group to Paris and London. And so she kind of ministers to students through that. And then my youngest is still in school, studying to be a software developer. So now I can confidently say it was worth all the energy that I put into it. It was hard work, probably the hardest thing I've ever done, but so worth it.
That's incredible. And I love hearing the success story where your children are now, but you really also inspired them with beauty and art in their learning and growing up time. And I'm curious, are there any personal lessons that the Lord has taught you through art?
Oh, goodness. Yeah, I think my desire was to make learning interactive because I saw what they were doing in the private school, which was sit in a chair all day and do your worksheets. And it was just worksheet after worksheet after worksheet, and then a quiz, and then you get graded. And so I was thinking, if I'm going to pull them out, I got to do better than that. And so that was my standard. And I was going to beat that standard every day. And so I pulled in art because that's what I knew. So if we were learning about an animal, we would draw the animal. If we were learning about a continent, we would draw the continent until we could draw it from memory. And I really learned with them. I did not have a great elementary education or even high school education. So I would learn this stuff and then I would think of creative ways to get them involved with it. So a lot of times it was drawing, it could be painting, it could be making things out of clay. We used to make things out of Rice Krispie treats. And then they could take it to their co-op group. Well, it was a classical conversations group, but they do presentations. And so we made a Mayan temple out of Rice Krispie treats, and we would make volcanoes. And then they could take it to their friends and share it with them and tell them about it. So anything I could do that would get us out of the chair, using our hands and using our senses and think, how can I incorporate all five senses? And that just made learning so much more fun for them and for me. And so a lot of it was art, some of it was science. Anytime I could incorporate a sense of play into what they were learning, I could see that they would learn so much more.
I love that, trying to incorporate all five senses, especially. That gets some ideas coming. But can you even back it up? And because you're an artist, will you give us an overview of the 7 major forms of art? And can you give us examples as parents for ways that we can engage our children with each of those?
Oh, sure. Let me think. All right. So drawing, of course, you can draw what you see. So when I teach students to draw, I do a progression. So we'll draw from line art, and you can find line art anywhere. It might be in a children's book. So using the library was key for me. So I'd get a laundry basket, and I would go to the library with an index card of what we'd be studying, and I would grab all kinds of books related to that. So when you come home, you get out a kid's book. If you see a good line drawing, say you're studying a lizard, if you see a good line drawing, draw from that. They could even trace it to start with. So you draw from the line drawing. Then once they get really confident with that, you go to drawing from photos, and then you go to drawing from real life. So maybe you have a fish tank. Maybe there's a fish in the fish tank, and you could draw from that or draw things in your yard. So that is how I break down drawing for them. And it could be years. Like you could draw from line art for years before you go to drawing from photos and then to drawing from real life. So drawing's great for learning to memorize things. For painting, painting's just fun. And so I like to go to the kitchen table every afternoon and paint what you see. So you start off with the younger kids, you could start with color and markers and fill in the areas. And then you can teach them how to shade using painting. Sculpture is also fun with kids. I like air dry clay and I like Sculpey clay. I like to get like a 1-pound block of Sculpey clay and teach them the basic forms like roll out a snake, do your hands together. Those of you who are listening, you can't see my hands, but I am making a sphere with imaginary clay. These are really good for developing their fine motor skills too. We also make the letters out of rollout snakes and form your letters. That will really help if they're reversing letters. It takes a while to build the whole alphabet. So maybe you do 3 or 4 letters a day. You work on it a couple times a week. It might take a month to make the whole alphabet, but that can be one goal, to get them working in 3 dimensions. We usually do additive sculpture, like adding on, and you can use found objects to make sculpture. One time my son took apart a pen and rearranged the pieces into a human shape, and it was lovely. So getting them thinking in 3 dimensions is related to sculpture. Carving, I don't like to do until they're old enough to be safe with a knife, but once they are, especially the boys, love to go outside in the yard and get a log, and they spend a lot of time carving spoons. Just a simple shape they could hold in their mind and then carve it. is a good activity. It keeps their little hands busy too if you want to read aloud to them and you don't mind a little mess in the house. They can carve. You can also carve out of a bar of soap as well for that. That's a subtractive sculpture technique. Let's see. That's the three main ones: drawing, painting, sculpture. I know film is one. Film I don't really incorporate much into my homeschool, except we will occasionally watch a movie about history. That has gotten me into trouble a few times because some of those movies that I think are going to be historic turned out to have racy scenes in them, and I'll have to like jump up and get in front of the TV or cough really loud. But there are some good films that you can watch together as a family. That's about as far as I went with film.
I would, if you don't mind me interrupting there too, I feel like that's one that our girls have actually begun to develop on their own, where our eldest daughter once wanted a video camera. So she got the old school video camera. So they're making their own movies. And I've seen that as a form of creative, artistic play.
Oh, that's fabulous. Yes. So when my kids were little, we didn't even have phones or video cameras on the phones. So that was an option. And there was when we first started homeschooling, our TV died. And so we did not even have a TV for years. We just decided not to replace it, which forced us into audiobooks and reading aloud and then just playing outside instead and reading books. That was a blessing.
I love that because that's one of the other forms that was new to me, that literature is an art form. And so, sorry, I sidetracked you because we still have literature, architecture, theater, and music.
I think the best thing that we did for our kids, of course, I love teaching them to write using Andrew Pudewa's method with IEW. It's kind of a imitative writing. So you learn to imitate good writers. But also my husband read aloud to the kids every single night. That was his time with him. It gave me a break, and he would read for hours. He loved it. The kids loved it. And he would choose classics or funny things, science fiction. Probably not the books that I would choose. I would choose classics and things related to what we were studying, but he chose what he wanted to read. So I would read aloud in the afternoons, and we would do audiobooks like Story of the World and all the Jim Weiss readings. And then he would read aloud at night, and just whatever he wanted to choose, he would read aloud. And I think hearing good language produces good speakers and good writers. So he gets about 50% of the credit for the success of the kids, I think, for just reading aloud every night. It was such a great thing to do for the kids. And then the last one, architecture. I do incorporate architecture when I'm teaching about a culture. So if we're doing art history or history, we'll look at the buildings. So of course you do that with ancient Egypt. You look at the pyramids. When you're talking Old Testament times, you look at the tents. And then as I go through art history with the high schoolers, I'll point out more and more, like neoclassical, of course, comes from the ancient Greeks, but it's come to symbolize power and authority, and that's why we see it in government buildings. So my degree is graphic design, but it was in the School of Architecture. So I had a lot of history of architecture, and I appreciate it. And so I'm always pointing that out to my kids, and I do that in my class, in my art history class. I always incorporate the architecture just as a part of understanding a culture.
I love that. And was there anything specific that you did with your kids for encouraging music or also theater?
Oh, yeah. One thing I wish I had done more of was kinder music. I don't know why we didn't do that much kinder music, but now I'm learning more about it. I wish I had done more of that. And I did put them in piano lessons. One wanted to do violin. So they had a few years of learning the basics of music. And then they really got into theater. We have a great Christian youth theater nearby. And so that was a really good experience. In their Christian youth theater, they would sing praise and worship songs, before and during and after a play. They would be praying for the audience and singing worship songs in addition to the singing on the stage. And that whole experience was really good for them. Even my quietest kid got a big role in a play one time, and he had to memorize a lot of lines and sing in front of people. It's just such a great experience for them.
I would think so. Even if they don't choose something that we would consider a very artistic career, I can see why all of this is still beneficial. So that leads me to another question for you. Regardless of the way that all of us parents listening are choosing to educate our children, why is it still beneficial for all of us to incorporate art into our homes and into our parenting?
Oh, that's a great question. So the first line of the Bible says God created. So the first thing we learn about God is that he was creative. He created everything. And then just a few lines later, it says, then he created man in his own image. So that tells me that we were created to be creative, to create. Now, he doesn't let us create stuff out of nothing like him, which is probably for our own good. That would be a mess. But we can create things out of what he created. And there was a study done by George Land, and there's a video on YouTube of George Land giving a talk about this creativity study that he did, and he created a test for NASA to help them find creative engineers when they were trying to get to the moon. And they used it to study creativity in children, and they tested 5-year-olds. So they found a group of 1,600 5-year-olds who were in school. And when they tested them at 5 years old, 98% of them tested as creative geniuses. So their plan was to go every 5 years and test them again just to see what was going on. So they went back after 5 years. The kids are now 10, and it dropped down to like 27%. They went back another 5 years when the kids were 15, and it was down to about 17%. And then they were so depressed, they stopped testing them because they could see they began as very creative. So we're created creative. And a lot of moms will say, yes, I can see that in my children. But something happens, and this was all in school, something happened during school that taught them to not be creative. So the school teaches the kids to be obedient, to sit still, and to get the same outcome from every kid, right? There's an expected answer on every test, and you're to try to get the answer that the teacher wants. That's not creative. So the first thing to do to preserve their creativity is don't send them to school. That's the safest bet. And then when you do homeschool them, which I think is the best environment for them, don't do what they do in school. To bring them home and to go to all this trouble just to do the same thing that they're doing in school is not worth the trouble. So you got to not do what they're doing in school. And so for me, that meant don't do worksheets, make the content interactive. So I did rely on curriculum, but I didn't rely on the curriculum to be the teacher. So I get the content from the curriculum, and then I make it interactive. Using artistic, creative skills so that they can be creative, and I don't teach it out of them. So if you have young kids, that's good news. They're already creative. You just have to don't teach it out of them. If your kids are older and maybe they've been in school, then you might have to undo some of that training and set up some experiences where you ask them, or even in my classes, I'll set up a challenge. And I expect everyone's to be different because everybody's going to do it a little bit more creatively in their way. And so at the end of class, instead of calling out the answers to see if everybody got the same thing, they're holding up what they did and telling me what they were thinking. And everybody's is different. And then I really praise the ones who did something different. Maybe they changed the colors. Maybe they and put glasses on Mona Lisa. Maybe they gave her a cat to hold. So I reward thinking outside the box. Now to pour in beauty, and I think I might have heard this from Charlotte Mason, beauty in, beauty out. So you've got to load them with beauty. Now, I think that we're naturally drawn to beauty, and people will argue with me about this. They'll say, "Well, beauty's in the eye of the beholder," but I bet you I could find something that's beautiful and do a survey, and I bet you I could get 100% of the people to say, "Yes, that's beautiful." And I could find something else, maybe a Hindu goddess sculpture, and I could find something that 100% people will say that is not beautiful. And so I think that ingrained in some of us, because we're created by God, I think we have a sense of appreciating beauty. I do think that it gets taught out of a lot of people. So, with my kids, I show them a lot of beauty. And this can be as simple as get a coffee table book from the secondhand bookstore on art and put it on your coffee table. Get books from the library and have lots of beautiful things to look at. And so when I was teaching my own kids, this is kind of a fly by the seat of my pants, make it up as I go. Now that they've left home and I can think about it, I'm putting together books that are a little bit more thoughtful. So in my books, you will see I've chosen a piece of art that is beautiful, and I will pair it with the lesson, and then I'll give you an art activity. So for example, in Into the Woods, you'll see I've chosen a beautiful piece of art, and I've paired it with a poem, which is another piece of beauty. Yes. And then I'll give you an art lesson so that they can get creative with it as well. So it is hard to pull it together. So that's why I'm making books to help parents. So you have something beautiful and something to do with it. And so that's how I pour in beauty, to get the beauty in, beauty out.
I love that so much. And just even holding this resource, it is so beautiful. There's so much to it. When it arrived, our daughters were delighted to go through it and to dive in and get to learn. But I'm just thinking many listeners are fellow homeschool parents, and also many are not. But I don't want them to be discouraged, because I'm even thinking of your courses, or if they do intentional art in the evenings or on weekends or summer break and winter break, there are still ways for all of us to incorporate this in.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, even so, my mom, I was public schooled. Of course, the word hadn't been invented back then, but my mom appreciates art and poetry, and she would always have art books on the coffee table. And I would just stop and, in my free time, flip through the pages, and those images stuck with me my whole life. She had one that had a Monet on the cover of the field of red poppies. And that was just ingrained in my mind as a piece of beauty. So just something as simple as putting it out on your coffee table. She also took us to museums whenever we traveled. And she didn't make a big lesson out of it, but I was exposed to beautiful buildings. Most museums are in beautiful buildings, so you see the beautiful architecture. And I was exposed to a lot of art that way. So that totally goes with with summer vacations and your vacations. Make an effort to see a gallery or an art museum when you're traveling. That makes a big difference. It'll make an impression on them. And of course, the books you could do in the summer. We have summer classes, and we have an art retreat. That might not line up with school because it's in May, but the books you could for sure add on. Hopefully someday we'll have evening classes so that you could go to school. We've got some this coming year that will start at 4:00. So hopefully some kids can go to school and come home and join an art class. So we're working on getting it out as I get teachers willing to. Most of my teachers are homeschool moms too, and by the end of the day they're tired. So I've got a few. I've got a young lady who's just graduating, and she's gonna do some late afternoon ones for us next year. So pretty excited about that.
I love that. And then even thinking of the beauty and beauty out, stepping outdoors. There's so much beauty in God's creation and so much change depending on where you live throughout the seasons. But I love how you also brought up the library, because anytime I'm trying to learn something new, that's my first go-to, is put books on hold at the library. And so if we're wanting to know what to add to our library cart just to get us started into this, can you share books that you recommend, both yours and others, that you think would be good additions?
Oh, that's a good question. Yes, there are. I love to think about the biographies of artists. And if you're studying ancient history, you could look up a biography on Giotto, and they'll tell the stories in such a nice, kid-friendly way. Like there's a story of Giotto. He was actually watching the sheep, and while he was out in the fields, he would draw on the sides of rocks, like big rocks, but he'd get another rock and he would draw on the sides of rocks. And another artist was walking through one day and he saw these drawings on the rocks and he was like, "Wow, you're really talented. Come with me. I'll make you an apprentice." And those stories are just, they're fun to read together and hear those kinds of stories. And of course, the Usborne books of art are beautiful, and they often have projects for the kids to do. Um, I can't think of any specific ones, but I do love a short paperback on the particular artists. And so I kind of line those up along with the period in history that we're studying.
That's great. And even you're making me think of picture book biographies on artists. We've always enjoyed those as well. Obviously, the illustrations are fantastic too, but the storylines are so interesting.
Yes. So I just grab whatever they have. I had a big laundry basket and a note card, and I just grab whatever I could find. And sometimes let the kids choose, and sometimes I would choose. If you're going with geography, you can find beautiful photos of the different areas and to see the landscapes or the sunsets, and that can through photography, and you can really get to know a place through beautiful photographs. I like that part too. And then that might inspire a pastel drawing of a landscape. Maybe it's a beautiful sunset you could recreate with pastels. So photography books are really inspirational too.
It's a great idea. And circling back, you had mentioned Andrew Pudewa earlier in our conversation. And I remember learning from him that with writing, the worst way we can teach our children is to say, just free write, just write something down, or here's a prompt, finish this sentence, because better writing comes through imitating. And so you've even mentioned tracing is a great way to start. That's not cheating in art if you're not stealing credit from them, but if you're just practicing and tracing, this is a way to imitate. And so I'm wondering, do you have any other cautions for ways that may be the wrong way to introduce our kids to art?
I agree that, yeah, you can get writer's block. What I find funny is that some people are so afraid to imitate artists. But if I were teaching piano, I would teach your kid how to play something by Bach, in which he would learn what Bach did, and nobody would say I'm stealing from Bach, and you learn to play Beethoven by playing Beethoven, and you learn to reproduce those pieces of music. I do the same thing in art. We look at what the masters did and we'll copy it in order to learn what they knew. And that way we're like standing on the shoulders of giants. So we don't want every kid to have to start with inventing the wheel themselves. We'd never get very far. We want to learn what the masters knew and then build on that. So I do a lot of imitation. And then as the student's ready, I let them know you are free to change this or to experiment with it. So just last week we were drawing and painting red poppies and learning about Georgia O'Keeffe. And so I said, we can do an imitation of her poppy, and I'll show you step by step how to reproduce her poppy. And in doing that, it causes us to look more closely at it and study her blends. Like she would blend from yellow to orange to red in every petal. And we can study that technique. And then as we do it and we practice it, we look more closely at hers and it kind of becomes a part of us. And then we'll find another flower and we'll use that same technique on a flower that we choose, or maybe it's a flower we make up. And we take that technique and we can apply it, and it's a much better way to learn than trying to learn it yourself without looking at what the masters did. So I think that I pulled a lot of that from Andrew Pudewa. The idea of, I'm gonna assist you until you say, I got this. I can do it from here. So I do assist until they get it, and then I always say, whenever you're ready, as soon as you're ready, change it and make it your own, or do your own thing. Because turning them loose too soon can break their confidence. So you want to build them up until they can confidently experiment on their own.
Let's take a quick break to hear a message from our sponsor. I'm so excited to share today's sponsor, WinShape Marriage, with you. WinShape Marriage is a fantastic ministry that helps couples prepare, strengthen, and if needed, even save their marriage. WinShape Marriage is grounded on the belief that the strongest marriages are the ones that are nurtured, even if it seems like things are going smoothly. That way, they'll be stronger if they do hit a bump along their marital journey. Through their weekend retreats, WinShape Marriage invites couples to enjoy time away to simply focus on each other. These weekend retreats are hosted within the beautiful refuge of WinShape Retreat, perched in the mountains of Rome, Georgia, which is just a short drive from Atlanta, Birmingham, and Chattanooga. While you and your spouse are there, you'll be well fed, well nurtured, and well cared for. During your time away in this beautiful place, you and your spouse will learn from expert speakers and explore topics related to intimacy, overcoming challenges, improving communication, and so much more. I've stayed on site at WinShape before, and I can attest to their generosity, food, and content. You will be so grateful you went. To find an experience that's right for you and your spouse, head to their website, winshapemarriage.org. That's WINSHAPE marriage.org. Thanks for your sponsorship. Well, and as parents, once we're past the resistance to maybe invest some of our time or our money or allow the mess into our home, but if we push past through that and we're ready to get started, I'd love to go over some practical tips. So, Courtney, first, just what are some great art supplies to have on hand?
A number 2 pencil and some Crayola markers. You probably already have. Those are great tools. I like to have my kids work in an art journal, and you can get these real inexpensive at Michael's. It'll say on the cover, mixed media art journal, and they come in different sizes. I kind of like the big ones, and that will allow you to use paint and pencil and marker or anything you want. If it says sketchbook, it's not going to hold up to paint very well. So that's why I get the mixed media paper. So I start with the art journal, and then I like to make that journal be their book on a subject. So right now I'm doing ancient history with some kids, and so they are making their own book about ancient history. So every week we'll do a drawing or a painting or a watercolor on a lesson in ancient history. And so each piece is not a masterpiece to hang on the wall. Each piece is a part of the story in their book. That takes all the pressure off. So they don't see this as, I don't know if this is going to be good enough to hang on the wall. That's not even a question. It's a part of the story in your book. They can also take some notes. They can show their grandparents and review the topic by presenting it to their grandparents and showing off their book. And then you can collect their books and put them on a shelf. It's not all over the house making you crazy. And then you can see from year to year how their skills have improved. So I kind of like, every year I like pick a topic to be the subject of our art journal. So I call it arts integrated learning. So I'm pairing an academic subject with art for that year. So it could be poetry, it could be history, it could be science, whatever you pick, that's what you'll add to your art journal with. So pencils, I like blending tools too. Some people call them stompies. For those of you who are watching, here's one. It's just rolled up newspaper, but you can buy these at Michael's. They're really cheap, but it takes a drawing to the next level by you can just blend things out and shade things really lovely. Mark Kistler does some videos and teaches you how to, he'll go shade, shade, shade. And so that's a good way to start. And it really elevates a drawing and it gives them a lot of confidence. And then, of course, a good eraser. The book Drawing with Children is a really good one for our parents to read and then teach from. In that book, they suggest you have them draw with marker so that they don't spend an hour erasing. If you have someone who's a perfectionist, they will make one mark and spend 20 minutes erasing it. And so if you go right to drawing with markers, that's going to teach them to make a good mark first and then keep going and not spend half an hour erasing. When I get to age 9 or 10, I like to use acrylic paints, but I only buy 4 colors of paint, and then I make them mix all the other colors. So we use yellow, magenta, blue, and white. Those are like the colors in your printer. Cyan, magenta, and yellow are the ones in your printer, and those colors can make all the other colors. Now, your printer has black, but I don't give kids black. Instead of black, they could make purple or brown or dark color. So you teach them how to mix the colors that they want. They'll learn to mix it because they want green or they want purple or they want brown. And then they develop a sense of color theory and you don't even have to teach it. They'll figure it out because they want those colors. If you don't feel confident in that, you can buy craft colors of specific colors, especially brown. That's a hard one to mix. But I do like the coverage of acrylic paints. I like watercolors too. That's a little bit easier to get into. You just take it slow and practice a lot. So that's really all you need. It's pretty simple.
Well, and I'm wondering too, even with the acrylic paint at that age, once they're older, that one I'm assuming can stain. So are there any tips that you have for containing the mess?
Yes, I get, and they're a little bit hard to find. So go to Amazon and find a tablecloth that is plastic on one side and felt on the other side. I forget what you call it, but there'll be like picnic tablecloths. And the plastic ones are going to drive you crazy because they're too thin. So if it's flannel backed, it's a little bit thicker. So I get a white one at the beginning of the year, and that comes out anytime we do clay or paint, and it goes over the kitchen table. And I don't worry about cleaning it. You just let it dry, fold it up, and I put mine in the china cabinet right there by the table. And then anytime we do something messy, that tablecloth comes out, and then just fold the mess back up in it. And it works. It works really great. And then you might, if you're a neat freak, maybe plan on buying one at the beginning of every school year, so that you get a clean slate. And then the paint that gets onto the tablecloth is actually lovely, and it'll be pretty next time you get it out.
Oh, I love that. That's a genius tip. I appreciate that for coming indoors, because in the summer, I guess we could take it outside, depending on where we live. But then what about any hacks for finding the time to do this? And I guess I'm thinking back to a previous episode with Beth Rosenbleeth. She's the one who started Days with Gray. And she would talk about different art prompts that she would set out for her children in the morning for a variety of ages. But were there any things that kind of required minimal time from you, but had maximum return for your kids?
Yeah, that's a good point. I had, I wouldn't say I had a strict schedule, but I had a pattern to my days. And the time after lunch was a good time to do messy things in the kitchen because we were in the kitchen anyway. And as I could clean up lunch and start dinner, I could be in the kitchen with them and they could be creative at the kitchen table with minimum involvement from me. One of my best afternoons was we had the microscopes out to do something specific, and I left it out as I was cooking chili. And as I cut up each ingredient, I would cut a thin slice for them to look at under the microscope. And so they were looking at a bell pepper and a red pepper and celery and tomato, and they so enjoyed that, and I was able to cook dinner at the same time, which was um, fabulous. And that it was probably like a 15-minute science lesson into like 4 hours of discovering things under the microscope. So that element of play, and you can do that with your art supplies too. Like I'll demonstrate a technique and then leave it out. I'll turn my attention to cooking dinner while they see what else they can do with it. And, I'll give them a few tips like if you mix these three colors together, you're going to make brown. And then turn your back and let them discover it for themselves. So I'm a big crock pot person. And so after lunch would be the time I need to clean up lunch and put something in the crock pot. So that would be a good time for me to get them started on art or science and then turn my back and let them have that discovery time without me hovering or telling them what to do or something.
Oh, that's a great rhythm. I love these ideas. And then I kind of want to go in chunks of age. So, thinking of little kids, how would you define the difference between a piece of art and a craft?
Yeah, craft is going to be something where the focus is on following directions. And that's important. They need to learn how to follow directions. And so we would do, especially around the holidays, I might do a craft and we all follow directions. A piece of art is going to be where they all come out different. They're allowed to play and express themselves. For me personally, if I'm doing a craft, when I'm done, I think, oh, I could make 50 of these and sell them. If it's an art, when I'm done with a piece of art, like one of these paintings behind me, when I'm done with that, I'm thinking, I could never do that again. That took so much out of me. I'm exhausted. A little piece of my soul is in that. That's art. So that's the difference. So I don't sell my paintings because there's a little piece of my soul in them. So my husband makes fun of me for that. He's like, you could just sell your paintings. And they're like, what? They're like my babies. I can't part with them. It took so much out of me to create them. But a craft, yeah, I'll just give away things that I just followed directions for. In terms of kids, younger kids will enjoy crafts, but get into high school, they recognize it as slave labor and they don't want to do that. They are in what the classical education people call the poetic stage. They want to express themselves and they want to be unique. I think this is why they get tattoos. The tattoo is a way of saying, this is who I am, this is what it means to me, I'm unique. So I think if we don't teach them to express themselves in art, they're going to get tattoos. So that might encourage moms to to give them the skills so that they can express themselves. They need to be able to write poetry or write songs or paint a painting or do a drawing. There's that need inside of us to do that God put in us. And if they don't have an outlet, then they're going to find something like tattoos or something that we don't want them to be doing.
Mm.
So, I mean, some of my kids are tattooed. It's not bad. But...
Well, and you've kind of answered a follow-up question I had because we talked about littler kids, but I'm thinking of teens. So going back, my background is in marriage and family therapy, and we would encourage everyone that journaling is a free form of therapy. But I think of art as the same way, and there's even studies that show when you're engaged in something artistic, the critical side of your brain goes offline, so you can't think negative thoughts while you're creating something new. But with teens, there's that added benefit of getting to express themselves. So is there anything else with art that you see as basically free therapy for adolescents?
Oh, sure. I do see it a lot. I experienced it because I started my business because of the shutdown and because I was teaching in person and then I had to switch to online teaching. And so the group that I had moved online and I figured out how to do it and got a little bit better at it. And then that summer, I offered a class for adults. These were directors, and I was in classical conversations at the time. And so a whole bunch of teachers are expected to teach Western cultural history without a lot of background. And so some of the moms asked me if I would do my art class for them. And so I had about a group of like 50 adults, and we would get on for an hour and a half every day. And this was at the height of the shutdown, when turning on the news just stresses you out. Going to the grocery store was stressful because people were in masks or they weren't in masks, or, we didn't know anything. It was such a stressful time. But that hour and a half that we had together, our focus was on discovering a piece of art. So we were looking at beautiful things, and then we were creating something, and that changed our focus from what was going on in the world, and we would just relax and we'd enjoy it. Having the live class kept our focus on it. And when I don't have a live class in front of me, I'll be like, oh, I should put the laundry in, or I should start dinner, and I get distracted. But with that, with other people on Zoom, it keeps me focused. And so we'd have this wonderful hour and a half vacation from the world. And after it was over, I would just have this sense of peace. And then I'd come down and be like, oh yeah, that's still going on. And it was so good for our mental health. And I hear moms tell me that the hour and a half once a week they spend with me doing art has been such a blessing. Like, one student lost her father a year ago, and this is helping her. She said she's finally coming out of her depression. She's finding a way to express herself and find beauty again, and it's been transformative for some students. So it is a blessing. And I didn't read that somewhere. That's just from my experience. So I'm a big believer in that.
I can see why. I think you're bringing up 2 points I don't want to miss, both with art therapy and then also art in community. So art and community first, I think for all of us at any age, what can we do, as this is airing probably when everybody's getting out for summertime? How can we gather others alongside of us, for whether it's our kids or us as peers, to get to engage in these activities together? And so I want to follow up with you on that. But also, before I lose my thought, I also want to link back to Karen Pence's episode. She had started art therapy for veterans, I believe, and just incredible the healing that is possible through this. So do you have any thoughts, Courtney, on ways that we can this summer gather together community at different ages and do something artistic?
That is a good question. So I have found the online classes are the easiest for people to get to. And it's, I get people ask if we can do it in person, but honestly, it's hard to get people out, or they're busy, they're doing things in summer. So we do offer a class online in the summer that's live. We have recorded classes that you could do alone or get a few people together and do them together. I have some sampler packs too. So some of them are just 3 lessons. You could get some friends together and maybe you could find three times during the summer to do. I have like a Van Gogh sampler pack and a couple short ones that you could just pay for the video and do with your friends, or maybe a mother-daughter event. Maybe you do the self-paced class with your daughter. And I've had some seniors in high school, do a mother-daughter class together and just say, this is such a good time for us to spend a little bit of time together, a little bonus time before they go off to college. During the school year, I have a watercolor artist friend. She lives near me, and she's a professional watercolor artist, and she does a class called Bible journaling. And that is a beautiful combination of a devotion and a watercolor time together. Those are hour-and-a-half classes too. And they meet once a week. And we'll have grandmas, we'll have high school students, we'll have mother-daughter pairs do it together. And they actually have a little prayer time, a little study of scripture. And then Kate teaches them step by step how to do a beautiful watercolor and incorporate some hand lettering in it. So that's just a beautiful, fun time together. So I highly recommend her class during the school year. if a mom could get away, or if you have a high school daughter, to do it together. That is a great experience. And then I have a short version of art history that you could do with friends or your high school daughter. It's called Paint Your Way Through Marvelous to Behold, which is just 12 lessons that goes through, and that's a variety of drawing and painting if you wanted to do something like that. So lots of things, or you can check out the books, and if you feel confident in following step-by-step instructions in a book, you could use the book or a combination of videos and books. If you're feeling kind of like you could lead a art group, you could get the self-paced video, watch the video, and then do, exactly what I said, do that live with the group. And if you have any art experience doing that, you could I would like invite all the homeschool moms in your co-op group to get together. And I do sometimes I'll go to do a mom's group, do a watercolor, or I love to do the Milkmaid with moms, because the Milkmaid is this beautiful painting from the Dutch masters of a woman cooking. She's just pouring milk. I think she's making bread pudding, and it's just so beautiful. It's like what I think I look like homeschooling. I'm wearing like a long gold gown, and the sun's coming in and everything's perfect. I'm like, this is the ideal. This is what I think homeschooling is going to look like. And then I kind of use that painting as a launch pad for painting Delft tiles from the period. And so sometimes I'll do that with some homeschool moms, because I like to encourage homeschool moms. I know it's hard. And I had some mentors when I was homeschooling that I really appreciated. So I'm always happy to be the support and be able to say, it's worth it. Keep going. I know you're driving a crappy car, but it will be worth it. And so the sacrifices you make now are totally pay off. And before I know it, my son is going to be homeschooling his daughter. She's 7 months now. But it's going to fly by. She'll be 4 before you know it. And I'll be teaching her how to paint, I suppose.
When was the first time you listened to an episode of The Savvy Sauce? How did you hear about our podcast? Did a friend share it with you? Will you be willing to be that friend now and text 5 other friends, or post on your socials anything about The Savvy Sauce that you love? If you share your favorite episodes, that is how we continue to expand our reach and get the good news of Jesus Christ in more ears across the world. So we need your help. Another way to help us grow is to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Each of these suggestions will cost you less than a minute, but it will be a great benefit to us. Thank you so much for being willing to be generous with your time and share. We appreciate you. I don't want to miss what website to direct everyone to if they want to sign up for one of these classes. Where's the best place to follow up?
Go to delightfulartco.com, and on that page you'll see live classes, self-paced classes, summer retreats. I've done adult retreats before. I'd be open to doing it again if people want to. So I have I would call it private retreats. So if you want to get a group of women together, maybe somebody has a beach house, I'll come and do the art. It could be a 1-day, a 2-day, or 3-day event. So that's an option. And we have the self-paced classes. So lots of things to look at. I have a lot of sample classes on the website too, if you want to drop in and see what they're like. I think there's a How to Paint Monet's Water Lilies is on the site. You can watch that and see what it's like. Some people are afraid to try an online art class, but we all loved Bob Ross and we watched him. So if you can imagine saying, Bob, stop, could you do that again? That's what my classes are like. And I'll be happy to stop and show you again. And then you can hold up your work at the end and I can give you some feedback. So I'm like the new Bob Ross.
There you go. That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And Courtney, I just have a couple more questions for you. Let's turn it back to parenting. If we want to get started today and we just want next step to get started, what is an art prompt that we can still try today?
I would look at what what are you teaching your kids? So if you're teaching them, maybe you have a library book on the coffee table that you're studying biology. Pull out one thing from that and draw what you see and reproduce that. Just one drawing a week, and before you know it, you'll have a whole biology book. So I like to, instead of saying, parents, you have to add on another course, you have to add art onto everything else you're doing, slide it into what you're already doing, and it will enhance what they remember about that. And it's not like a whole nother subject. So just use art as a tool to help them remember what you want them to learn anyway. So anything you want them to teach, if you have a photo or a drawing, have them trace it or draw it. Another good way to start is if you have little kids in Bible story time, let them draw what you're reading about. My son loved to do stick figures, so I have the whole Bible told in stick figures from my youngest kid, and it is fabulous, especially like Sodom and Gomorrah, and there's a lot of violent stuff. Boys love that stuff. So he illustrated a lot of the Old Testament because I read it every morning, and he would just draw what he heard me. I think I was using the Children's Illustrated Bible, so he had some things to look at. That's another great way to get started. Just let them look at the story and draw it in their own art journal. So there's so many fun ways you can use it in every subject. I had a mom tell me, she wrote me an email. She said, my daughter is just blooming in your classes. I wish every subject could be taught with an art journal and a paint palette. And I replied, we're working on it. We've got Latin and art, science and art, literature and art. There's just so many ways to find inspiration in what you're already studying and find the beauty in that subject. So in our art and biology course, students do a beautiful watercolor of the DNA strand. And they draw the cell in watercolor, and it's just beautiful, and it helps them remember it and practices their art skills. So it's like a 2-for-1. You can think of it as a 2-for-1. Take art and put it in another subject.
I love win-wins. That sounds amazing. And Courtney, I just have one final question for you today. We are called the Savvy Sauce because savvy is synonymous with practical knowledge or insight. And so as my final question for you today, what is your savvy sauce?
The beauty in, beauty out has been kind of my savvy sauce. And also as unto the Lord. So whatever I do as unto the Lord. If I'm homeschooling, if I'm teaching biology, I'm going to do it as unto the Lord. I'm not going to hand out a worksheet. I'm going to make it a great experience. So I would have to say, whatever you do it wholeheartedly as unto the Lord and not for men.
What a great place to end. Courtney, you are so inspiring. You've given us great ideas and kind of confidence to get to put this into practice. Even if we're not artists like you, we're all created in God's image and therefore can be creative. So thank you for your time and wisdom today. Thank you so much for being my guest.
You are sure welcome. I had a great time. It's good to talk to you.
You as well. One more thing before you go. Have you heard the term gospel before? It simply means good news, and I want to share the best news with you. But it starts with the bad news. Every single one of us were born sinners, but Christ desires to rescue us from our sin, which is something we cannot do for ourselves. This means there is absolutely no chance we can make it to heaven on our own. So for you and for me, it means we deserve death and we can never pay back the sacrifice we owe to be saved. We need a Savior. But God loved us so much, He made a way for His only Son to willingly die in our place as the perfect substitute. This gives us hope of life forever in right relationship with Him. That is good news. Jesus lived the perfect life we could never live and died in our place for our sin. This was God's plan to make a way to reconcile with us so that God can look at us and see Jesus. We can be covered and justified through the work Jesus finished if we choose to receive what He has done for us. Romans 10:9 says that if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised Him from the dead, you will be saved. So would you pray with me now? Heavenly Father, thank you for sending Jesus to take our place. I pray someone today, right now, is touched and chooses to turn their life over to you. Will you clearly guide them and help them take their next step in faith to declare you as Lord of their life? We trust you to work and change lives now for eternity. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. If you prayed that prayer, you are declaring Him for me, so me for Him. You get the opportunity to live your life for Him. And at this podcast, we're called the Savvy Sauce for a reason. We want to give you practical tools to implement the knowledge you have learned. So you ready to get started? First, tell someone. Say it out loud. Get a Bible. The first day I made this decision, my parents took me to Barnes & Noble and let me choose my own Bible. I selected the Quest NIV Bible and I love it. You can start by reading the book of John. Also, get connected locally, which just means tell someone who's a part of a church in your community that you made a decision to follow Christ. I'm assuming they will be thrilled to talk with you about further steps, such as going to church and getting connected to other believers to encourage you. We want to celebrate with you too, so feel free to leave a comment for us here if you did make a decision to follow Christ. We also have show notes included where you can read scripture that describes this process. And finally, be encouraged. Luke 15:10 says, "In the same way, I tell you, there is rejoicing in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents." The heavens are praising with you for your decision today. And if you've already received this good news, I pray you have someone to share it with. You are loved, and I look forward to meeting you here next time.